Most bankers aren't ready to help you until after their third cup of coffee. But with Central National Bank's after-hours service, you don't have to wait for the bank lobby to open to get help. You can contact us from 6 to 8:30 in the morning or from 5 to 10 in the evening, and we'll connect you to a real, live, local person who can answer questions and fix problems 7 days a week. Bank different. Bank Central. Central National Bank. Member FDIC.
Coming up on The Payoff, a conversation with Ali Perry. Ali is a titan in the fitness industry, and she's absolutely hilarious. She's also almost a decade sober. Now, this is a story that is unbelievably inspiring. It's also got the makings of a Lifetime movie. Her words, not mine. You're going to love this podcast. But first, Kevin Souza.
Stand by the ocean floor.
I know you're sober a lot of years. Is it 7 or 8 or 9?
I think it's 12 when 12. I'm really bad at math, so I'm thinking it's over 8 now.
It is
right?
over 8 years. Yeah, coming up. Well, I guess we're a while away, but it'll be 9 years soon. I was 9 years in November.
Nice.
Yeah.
November what?
November 7th, 2011.
Beautiful.
I'm
pretty sure that I got sober in November as well, but I liked 12 when 12 better. Like, I have a couple extra days, but when I was looking at my data, I was like, ooh, 12 when 12, I like that. Better than 11/29/12. So that's why I went with that one.
Did you get sober on the first try?
I used to say yes, but no. I stopped drinking and using drugs except for my prescription Adderall, and I kept taking that for 9 months, and then that's when I truly got sober and stopped taking Adderall and all that too. And that was really complicated for me because I was in the middle of a custody battle, and part of the court documentation said that I had to take something for my ADHD medicine. And so, being really newly sober and not wanting to be sober, I took that as I have to keep taking Adderall. And at first I only took it. It was weird. I only took it when I was being drug tested so that it would show up on a drug test. And then I did that for several months, and then I just fell back into taking it and abusing it after that. So it was a complicated little situation, as they always are. But it ended up with me abusing it again, and at 9 months, a big event happened, and I got sober.
We'll get to that big event. I too, my first memory of substances working for me, I was a kid in grade school at St. Thomas Good Counsel outside of Philadelphia and Bryn Mawr. And I was like I always think, because I'm unique, right? I was one of the first people to take Ritalin, but I was like one of that first wave where they were prescribing kids that couldn't sit still. And, kids with learning disabilities, but me having that addict DNA, I can remember going to the principal's office and they would give it to me in the morning, my mom would, and then I would take it at lunch. And that's my first memory of being like, oh, like I'm kind of turned on now. And like two things happened. One, I definitely think I had a chemical reaction to that. And I did throughout the course of my, my drinking and using. And two, I felt like I had to take something to be something. I always felt like I wasn't like quite good enough.
Mm-hmm. You had to take it just to be even with the other kids.
Just to be even with the other kids. Yeah. And yeah, exactly. And that's kind of, I worked under that belief. Now, I want to ask you, you mentioned when you stopped, when did you start? When was the first time that you got drunk or you got high?
Okay, but I have a follow-up question to your statement first, and then I'll answer yours.
Absolutely.
When you were going and taking the Adderall at the principal's office, or Ritalin, I guess they didn't have Adderall yet, did you find yourself looking forward to it, or were you ashamed of it?
I was ashamed of it, but then I can remember there was a point in time where I was embarrassed because I remember a couple girls were like, you're spaz, because it was kind of known that I had to go take it at lunch. It was like a small Catholic school. And then there was a point in time where I remember it working. I really can remember it working, and I can remember thinking, not only do I'm better on this. So I definitely, and when you're a kid, you can't, you really can't abuse it. Unless you're into the Queen's Gambit. I don't know if you've seen that, but I couldn't, I didn't have the access. So, but that's the answer to your follow-up. Yeah.
Yeah. And I forgot what your question was.
When's the first time you got drunk or the first time you got high?
Got it. Okay. So the first time I got drunk, I think was in about middle school, right? I'd already used my first drug of choice, so sugar immediately from, 6 years old. As soon as I can remember onward was my first drug and the first thing that I used to make me change the way I felt. But we were a bunch of latchkey kids, and one of the older kids, I think maybe freshman in high school, made some Everclear, and we all were drinking it and having fun. And I didn't really get that drunk, and I remember still being kind of scared from it, not really excited. I didn't have that reaction that a lot of addicts have the first time they drink, and I think I just kind of got tipsy. So that takes me to the first time I really got drunk, and that was the week before high school started. I got invited to an upperclassmen party, and I went there, and the hunky hot like wrestler surfer dudes had some Kool-Aid, right? That awesome Kool-Aid. They were like, "Are you thirsty? You can have some of this Kool-Aid." And I was like, "Yeah, this is delicious. And hey, it's got sugar." So I drank a shit ton of it. And then I ended up like dancing on a table and going upstairs. And like my sister's best friend who was older was there, and he saw me walking upstairs. And I'm pretty sure I was barely 14. I was a young high schooler, and I didn't know what I was doing. Some dude was like, "Let's go upstairs." So my sister's best friend pulled the guy by his shirt, ripped his shirt off, jerked him downstairs, called my mom. My mom came and picked me up, and I remember she had her boss's car, and I puked all over the car all the way home. And then she woke my ass up at like 7 a.m. the next morning with a bucket and a pail and said, "Go clean the car." And then I didn't drink for years. I was terrified. I didn't want to be.
So
in
you
that
were
situation.
scared. You were scared straight almost.
Yeah, I was scared straight through high school. I drank a couple more times with very similar results, like embarrassing, talking so much, being like, "I'm the best. Look at how many shots I can take," and then just being horribly sick afterwards. I was pretty much a good girl in high school. I started the SAD chapter at my school.
Students
Ironic.
Against Drunk Driving?
I sure as shit did. I started the SAD chapter. I was president. I was cross-country captain. I was editor of the newspaper. I was all those things. I was the girl that wouldn't let you listen to gangster rap on the way to school because it was misogynistic. Like, I was that chick.
And this is in Nags Head, North Carolina?
Yep, in Kill Devil Hills. The high school was in Manio. Yeah. I was that chick. I was the chick that defended all the freaks and geeks, and probably would have been a freaking geek as well if I hadn't been easy on the eyes. But then I went. True. I mean, it's true.
Well,
like,
it's true, and just people to know right now, you can go to Ollie Perry Fitness IG if you don't believe her. We'll get to more of that later. When do you start to see yourself drinking or using with consistency? Was there a moment? I mean, you mentioned it was real spotty throughout high school.
So I didn't realize this until I'd been sober for a few years and had been in like intensive therapy. And so senior year of high school, my childhood friend, the one that I got drunk with when I was in 7th grade, came to me and asked me if I had remembered this neighbor who used to live in our neighborhood. And I kind of like got the cold sweats immediately. And she was like, "Do you remember him?" I said, "Yeah." And she was like, "Do you remember what he used to do?" And he was a predator, and he was a child molester, and even, hurt his daughters, hurt hundreds of kids. And I had blocked it all out, like completely blocked it all out from like 3rd, 4th, 5th grade. And there was several of the kids. It was very much like single mom. It was a nice neighborhood, but a lot of the moms were working moms, divorced moms. And so we were just kind of, as a lot of kids were in the 80s growing up, like you'd come home from school and get out and ride your bike and be around outside all day long until the sun went down. Then
that's what I did.
Right?
Yeah,
that's what I did. And it was great, except our neighborhood in particular had a predator. And so he, did what he did with, I think there was about half a dozen kids in our neighborhood. A lot of those girls ended up having a very different trajectory in their life. Like they weren't able to get back to center afterwards. I was one of the only ones that kind of pulled it back together. So she reminded me of that, and we went to the cops and filed a report and tried to press charges and all of that. And that point was when I started smoking and drinking, and that was the end of senior year of high school. And then between then and when I started in college, I tried like 20 different drugs. I remember doing a list when I was in college, and I listed everything out my freshman year. Like, look how many drugs we've tried. This is amazing. Like a proud list. Like there was no shame in it. It was like, holy shit, we've done so many drugs.
I mean, I laugh, but it's and it's only funny to another alcoholic, talking to another alcoholic who is sober, because that's kind of the mindset, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, you're proud of it. It's your badge. You can drink more, you can take more, you've had more experiences, all of that. So in the moment, I had no idea that was when it shifted, right? Because I'm ADD as well, and I just kept myself busy. So my drug was taking myself to the point of exhaustion and sugar in high school, right? And then when that trauma flooded back in, the keeping myself busy and sugar wasn't enough. So I needed more. I didn't know how to deal with it. And I wasn't even aware that I was dealing with it, if you know what I mean. Like I didn't have the clarity to know, like, okay, now I'm using drugs because I'm remembering all this trauma that I went through.
Those traumatic events, and I appreciate you sharing that, because that's the kind of thing that, and we'll get to this in a little bit, but that's how you stay well. Sitting down in the program and sitting down with the sponsor and somebody and sharing this stuff with them. And before you share it with them, this is for me, you think it's just going to be, whatever it is that somebody's carrying with them, that it's going to be something that, the person across from you might be like, oh my God, you're horrible, when it's the exact opposite.
Yeah, they relate.
Yeah.
Or they laugh at you. My sponsor laughed at me when I told her the worst thing I'd done. She laughed straight in my face, and I was just like, really? Like, wait, that's not awful? So yeah, there's that understanding, and in my experience, I've noticed that a lot of people don't talk about trauma. They don't bring it up, and whether it's because they're ashamed of it, or they don't think it's relevant, or they don't want to have an excuse or stigma label, whatever the reason is, it's not talked about enough. And when I get to know people who are sober and people who have gone, who have decided to be sober, have gone through stuff, it's a common theme. Like,
I think it's like, yeah, the sexual abuse. I heard Dax Shepard talk about it on his podcast, or a podcast with Brene Brown, something like Brene Brown, the therapist. And he said it was something like 80% of
people don't talk about it a lot.
Yeah, 80% of kids that are sexually abused become alcoholics, or some crazy statistic like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then that makes you think, like, they say that there's a chemical imbalance, that our brains are wired differently. Like, does the abuse make your brain wired differently, or having your brain wired differently, does that make you more susceptible to a predator? Like, they can sense it? I don't know. It just brings my head down a rabbit hole wondering how it's all connected. But facts are the facts. The vast majority of people who have addiction and have alcohol issues have had that kind of trauma in the past.
It's certainly a trigger. If somebody's listening today, they're carrying this thing with them, and they feel like they're unable to share it or let it out, and they do have a drinking or alcohol or drug problem that they're using to cover it up or to kind of shut it down and quiet that voice, what would you tell them?
Number one, hit me up. I'm always available and want to be of service for people who are doing that. There's no reason to sit on that alone, and the only thing it does is just break you down from the inside out. I've shared that part of my experience half a dozen times, and my heart's still racing now talking about it. It still brings up damage and hurt and pain. But the difference is that because I talked about it, and because I trusted other humans to be kind, and they were, and I took that leap of faith, I exposed myself that way, it makes it less tender every single time. It makes it more of an example of strength and overcoming something than it is of you being a victim and you having something wrong with you. Like, there's nothing wrong with that happening to you. The only thing I would say could be wrong is keeping it inside and not giving yourself the permission to heal. And it becomes a story for other people to relate to that gives them the courage and gives them the power to reach out and have healing as well. You know, when I've shared that story with other people, the response has never been anything other than, wow, that's brave. Thank you for sharing that. Or, oh my gosh, I thought I was the only one. You know, like, your story gives other people strength. That's it. So, like, whether it's reaching out to me or reaching out to a therapist or any number of the support systems that are out there, all you gotta do is Google it. You know, like, the first step is just letting go of that secret, and you'll find that people are so loving about it. There's not that shame about it anymore. People are hip to it. You know.
Yeah, and once shame is put into words, a lot of times it dies out. It doesn't exist. And that's not for me. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You've got this terrible trauma that happens. You start, you notice you're abusing drugs throughout college. And then what happens after college? From what I took, you're abusing drugs, you're making the list in college. And then how does it go from there?
It got really bad. My sophomore year in college was—
Where'd you go to school, by the way?
UNC Greensboro.
Okay.
My best friend went to Greensboro, and I heard there was a lot of green there. You know, it's like UNC Green or UNC Gay back when you could say that.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of pot, and there was a lot of like counterculture people there. So I was in. I was like, I'm in. I was sick of the Surfer Boys. I didn't want to go to UNCW. I was like, I don't want to see all these people again. I didn't want to go to State. I thought that was all the rednecks. So I went to UNCG.
So you're at UNCG, and you're it's getting pretty bad.
It's getting bad. Like the beginning. So I was pretty much a straight A student through high school, and then I started college, and my grades plummeted immediately. I wasn't going to class. I went from being busy from sunup to sundown, well into the night, to having 4 hours a day where I had to be accountable. That combined with using, all of it just kind of went downhill real fast. So my mom was trying to figure out what was going on with me. She was like, maybe you have ADHD. Now that you're not busy, let's get you tested. So they got me tested. They gave me Adderall. So now I have Adderall, weed, alcohol, all the other drugs that you get in college. And from then it was like I couldn't sleep, so they gave me Xanax. And then it was like I had stomach issues, so they gave me something else. So by the time I was a sophomore, I was on a bunch of narcotics and weighed 30 pounds less than I do now. Skin awful. I mean, just really, really bad. And my best friend called my mom and was like, she needs help. And my mom, which I was resentful about for years, but now knowing where I was and understanding my addiction and understanding her as a human being and being a mother myself, she said, I'm not going to send her to rehab unless she's ready. She was like, she's not going to do anything unless it's her. You know, what she said was, she's not going to do anything unless it's her idea.
Which is actually brilliant, because that's in the literature for the big book for people that get sober is, let the alcoholic think it was their idea.
And she didn't know. She never read the book. She just really smart. Can I curse?
Well, yeah, you just did.
But I mean, can I again?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Go ahead.
Less.
Yeah.
Okay. So I ended up taking a year off school, did a little geographic, moved to California, came back, finished school. And
so you went to California. That's what we call in recovery like a geographic change. It's like wherever you go, there you are. It doesn't work.
Yeah, and I was there again. It was amazing. Yeah. I got a little better. I put on weight. I stopped using as much, right? Didn't party as much. Went back and finished school, and then moved to New York for a little bit. Then I moved to LA.
And so what are you doing this whole time professionally? I mean, it's AlliePerryFitness.com. And like I said, we'll talk about that in a little bit. But what was your career trajectory?
Trying not to work as much as I could and have a really good life. Like I was, my major was media, journalism, and I had an internship afterwards at a news station. I didn't do it. I was like, I'm not doing that because it was work and I didn't want to. So I moved to New York with this guy that I had a huge crush on when I was younger and started modeling. And he was like the first guy on the cover of Teen magazine and much older than me. So I started dating him, moved to New York, did commercial stuff and modeling for a while, and then realized that it wasn't the right fit for me, meaning the relationship, not the job, because the job was great because you never did anything. And then moved to LA for a job in fashion merchandising because my sister was there and she just had a baby. So I did another geographic, but this time it was to get away from a relationship. And shortly after, and at this point I wasn't that bad. I was still a pothead, but I didn't drink much because my stomach was messed up from all the stuff I'd done in college. So at this point I'm just a pothead and Xanax sometimes, which was like, it was like a chill period.
What was the drug culture like as far as modeling was concerned in that world?
Very prevalent. You know, there's no shame around it. I was always pretty secretive about my drugs, but like everyone else was just very open. They would take whatever out of their purse, just pop it right in front of you, or, you know, not as glamorous as some of the movies make it seem, but it wasn't, there was no shame in it. It was almost like, hey, you want a cup of tea? You know, like it wasn't even really discussed. It was just there and you just did it. Right. Whereas I never wanted to do my drugs in front of anyone because I didn't want to share.
I can relate. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I was like, they're just sharing their drugs. Like, what if they run out? You know, like I was always like, no, I don't have any. I don't have anything. So it was just what I noticed the most was there was a lack of shame around it. And I always felt shame around my drug use because I was doing it for a reason. You know, I was doing it to forget, not because drugs were fun.
Was there a point where you noticed you started to really use it almost as a way of whether it's social lubrication or whether it's just feeling like you're fitting in?
Yeah. I mean, within the first couple months of college, I was there. I mean, I only swallowed my ADHD medicine for like 3 months. The rest of the time was going straight up my nose. Like there was no casual or used as prescribed period in my life. Like I went from 0 to 100.
Did you think that you were going to need to get sober? Like for me, a lot of the time, I had some people in my life who had gotten sober, and I said, okay, there's a way out. And I had a really good friend who's still sober today, like many, many years. And he got sober when we were 18. And I saw this guy and I saw he had a light coming off him. And I was like, there is a way out. Did you ever have that, maybe a notion that, okay, I'm going to have to get sober someday. And if I do, it's going to be okay. Or was it not even on the radar?
I didn't have an example that way. There were a couple people in high school and college that were what they used to call straight edge. I just thought they were really weird, and they're also like born again and straight edge at the same time. So I was very confused by it. I didn't understand why anyone would want to be sober. Once I'd found drugs and alcohol, like that's what I was going to do forever. My train of thought was more like, I'm going to die from this and that's okay. You know, kind of like suicidal ideation or just acceptance of if I continue down this road, I'm not going to live for very long. And that didn't scare me. I was okay with it. I had no self-worth, no self-esteem. I didn't want to live, but I also didn't have the courage to end anything. Right. So I just wanted to be here, but only my body be here.
And you're at that jumping off point, right? You can't live with it. You can't live without it. What was that jumping off point for you where it maybe led to a moment of clarity?
So that's fast forwarding 10 years from where we were, from moving to LA.
So what do we miss in between? What do we miss in between? Fill in the blanks. Take me up until that point, because this is a pretty good story. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, this is good stuff right here. Okay, so I moved to LA. I met my first husband within months on the beach in Malibu. I refused to date him because he was successful and like not like I've always been in charge in relationships, and I was scared by his wealth and success. So we were just kind of friends for several months. He's a spinal neurosurgeon, so he's very smart and very crafty. And so
how was he crafty? With his like with his words or with?
Oh, very, very smart man. Not good to other people, not good to me. Mm-hmm. Right. A lot of psychological abuse, gaslighting, that kind of stuff. Like never laid hands, never did anything like that. But very much broke me down to a shell of even what I was in college. You know, by the time our marriage was over, I was nothing. I was absolutely nothing.
For
I
me,
didn't have
when I was drinking and using stuff, that was a big part of my relationships. Was it a big part of this relationship?
no. So when I met him, he said he had zero drug and alcohol tolerance when we started dating. So I immediately stopped smoking weed and immediately didn't drink anymore. I didn't drink much anyway. That lasted for a few months. We moved in together. We got married pretty quickly, like in a year and a half. We were engaged in 9 months. We were married within a year and a half. And so I stopped everything. And that only lasted for, I'd say, 3 or 4 months. And then I would do the, doctor's wife thing. Like I'd have a gin and tonic in the afternoon before he came home from work. And then I'd start having like two. But I managed and controlled it for
But you're
a
hiding
pretty
it.
long time. Yeah, I'm definitely hiding it. I'm definitely taking a shower, but I wasn't getting drunk. I was just kind of like taming the beast a little bit. And then we moved from Malibu to Beverly Hills. So I was like the Beverly Hills doctor's wife. And I mean, I am not Beverly Hills material at all. I'm loud. I have opinions. I don't give a shit if your purse is Gucci or Prada. Like, I don't care. I was still shopping at Gap and a doctor's wife with a full staff in Beverly Hills. Like, it's not my scene at all. And so I didn't fit in. Had our first child, and then I was pregnant 5 months later. Like, first pregnancy was terrifying. I thought my child was going to have SMA type 3. This was a whole genetic thing in my family. Didn't know till I was 6 months pregnant. Like, had a really hard pregnancy and had postpartum, and ended up getting pregnant again when my first child was 5 months old. So I had 2 pregnancies back to back.
Wow. Is there any drinking in between the pregnancies?
Like in between a little bit, like I would pump and dump if I drank or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I got pregnant pretty quickly. I got pregnant 2 weeks after.
What's pump and dump?
Pump and dump is if you're breastfeeding, you get drunk, then you pump your milk and dump it so you don't get your baby drunk. So it's called pump and dump.
Okay.
So if you drink as a breastfeeding woman, it's not even an alcoholic thing. It's like if you drink and you're breastfeeding, you pump and dump.
Okay, gotcha.
And they even had these little strips that you could put in your milk to see if there's alcohol in it. I had a lot of those around to make sure that I wasn't giving the kids alcohol. That should have been a sign too, right?
Yeah.
Second was born, horrible postpartum. Couldn't function. Really sad. Really wanting it all to end more so than ever before. And remembered how good I felt when I was on Adderall. Felt a lot of pressure to like be the Beverly Hills doctor's wife with the babies and like have them always looking good and the house always looking good and all of the things that from the outside looking in would make it seem like the perfect life, right? And I couldn't do it. I wasn't able to. So I went to the doctor, got Adderall.
Keep you moving.
Keep me moving. I remember the first time I took it, I was sitting out in the garden and I called my mom and I was like, Mom, I feel better. And she was so happy. She heard my voice and she was like, I haven't heard you like this in years. I was like, I can do this. Like, I'm able to do this now. I just needed a little help. And it was fantastic. And I felt great. And, everything was together and I was able to hold down all of the different expectations that were there of me, but it very quickly turned into now I can't sleep. So I went and got a marijuana prescription. And then I was hiding that because I wasn't supposed to do any of that. So I was like, stashing drugs all over the house and like driving through the alleys and smoking weed in my minivan in between preschool and working out and whatever. Like it got out of control really fast and full blown addiction, worse than college by the time my youngest was about 18 months. Horribly unhappy marriage, narcissistic tendencies on his side. Very controlling, never saw my friends.
How did he respond to the abuse? Or was he even aware? Were you doing that good of a job of hiding it? No,
I was horrible at hiding it. He was totally aware, wanted me to go to rehab, refused. I left him, and this is a man who's never had anyone tell him no or leave him or anything. So we were supposed to just have a nice little mediation and divorce, but he changed lawyers. And that lawyer picked up on my addiction issues, and it turned into a 10-year custody battle which was the hardest thing I've ever gone through. I left him. My addiction got worse. He wanted the kids to stay there at night because he was working all day. I agreed because in my mind, I was like, I get to see my babies all day and then I get to party all night.
Yeah.
Like, that's perfect. I didn't know I was setting precedent. Like, I didn't understand how all of these things were going to play out in court.
But it's insanity, right? Because it's all predicated on getting what you need as far as the drugs and alcohol are concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. And so
we're talking about
right
kids,
mind,
we're talking about your kids.
Yeah. Yeah. And anyone in their right mind would be like, no, you're not going to have my kids at night. Like, they would probably even know that that sets precedent, which means like wherever the kids stay at night is who has custody, period. It didn't matter that I was with them from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. and he only saw them for an hour and the nanny was there if he was at work. Like, none of that mattered. It was who has them at night. So I had several depositions. I'm talking like nasty stuff, like Lifetime movie kind of stuff. I don't know how long the podcast is, but
we got time.
It told me I will live under a bridge before you'll have these kids. Went from let's make this work, I'll do anything, to I will crush you and ruin you and you will never have these kids. Had PIs following me. Had people befriend me at the preschool to get information on me. Had the nastiest lawyer in LA possible, who's known for being just absolutely horrible. Ruthless, just that person. I was told to, and my lawyer told me in the deposition, just be honest. That was my advice. Just be honest. So when they were like,
you
when
sure?
Did you start using? Yeah. I was like, 7th grade. And they're like, what was college for you? I was like, I smoked, an ounce a week and took 30 Adderalls and, like, I was honest. And no one's ever honest in those things. I mean, it was like a confessionary, 8 hours of confession of all the shit that I've done wrong and bad. And afterwards, my lawyer was like, I didn't mean that honest. I was like, what? Like, what? Like, she just sat there and watched. My lawyer was not as good as his lawyer. So nevertheless, the court ordered me to be sober.
We talk about that jumping off point. Was that the point where you stopped or you surrender?
No, it was not. That was the point where I was sober for 3 months and then realized, this custody battle was supposed to be a year and it was going longer and longer. And I was sober for 3 months and just white knuckling it. That was the point where I'm pretty crafty. I'm a smart person. I'm creative. I'm a problem solver. So I figured out how to trick the test and drink and go on trips and come back because, the drug test they were having me take was a very, very specific amount of time from when you take the drug to when it would show up. And it was very, very strong, the strongest test you could have. So I was testing several times a week. So it was a very short window of time where I could drink.
What a life to lead, right? The insanity, and also there's a stress of waiting for the other shoe to drop. That's what I'm hearing because I can relate.
Constantly in fear, constantly looking over my shoulder. I remember I was still allowed in the house at this point, and I remember finding a letter from his lawyer with all of the itemized bill, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and on there it said something about the PI. So that's when I learned that there was a PI following me. So then that turns into me like crouching down in the corner, taking shots of vodka where no one can see me from any of the windows with all the lights off. Like, that's where I was. And that became too stressful. So then I figured out a way to actually cheat the test. And that's when my drugs and drinking went nuts. I mean, I was waking up in the morning. I didn't have my kids. All I wanted was my kids. At this point, I wasn't allowed to see them. He had started a new relationship, and I wasn't allowed to go over to the house during the day. So I went from spending all day long with them to this woman coming in and becoming their mom, and me not being allowed to see them, and me not having the strength and knowledge to be like, these are my kids, I'm taking them, right?
Yeah.
Year and a half, 2 years between court dates. So it was like 2 years of waiting, of not having any change in custody. And I'm like heartbroken. I can't see my kids. All I want to do is see my kids. And it still upsets me. Like, I have a beautiful relationship with them now, but it was 10 years of seeing them like, 3 hours a week or 10 hours a week. And then this very limited step-up plan that took forever to come into place. and this new relationship where they were having them call her mom, and they refused to call me mom. And I've never been spoken of kindly. I've never been uplifted. There's never been like, your mom got over this addiction and she was sick. It was, your mom left you to go party and she's a horrible person. Like, this is what I'm running up against. This force, this powerful, angry, wealthy force that wants nothing more than to just eliminate me. And so I drank more. I got up in the morning and I would drink 4 shots of vodka to make sure I wasn't hungover, and pop 3 20-milligram Adderalls, and then it would just go from there, you know?
And then it's going and it's going and it's going. And does the heartbreak lead to you getting sober, like the heartbreak with the kids?
Yes. What happened was, it was a week away from the custody battle being done. The kids were young. They were now they're 14 and 13. So now at that point they were 6 and 5. Literally a week away from it being signed and me getting a step-up plan to 50-50, all that. And the woman he had befriend me at the preschool asked me to go to a concert. They like literally paid a woman to befriend me to give him information. Asked me to go to a concert. I met her before at a bar. We were drinking. The PI was a table away, watching, filming, listening.
This is a Lifetime movie, by the way.
Yeah. The guy that I was dating at the time was like, cheers to pea popsicles. And she was like, what? And he was like, oh yeah, that's how Ollie can drink. She freezes her pea and then
And you beat the drug test.
Beat the drug test. Monday, my lawyer calls me. What the F happened? I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, we're having an emergency hearing for tomorrow. You're losing custody. Nothing's on the board. Like, we were having them sign the papers today. What did you do? And I was like, what are you talking about? I had no idea. And even sitting at that table, Pete, I was like, oh, he has people following me. That guy right there, he's probably a PI. F you, PI. Like, that's how far gone I was. I looked the guy right in the face and I was like, F you, PI. And he was the PI. That's when I completely lost custody.
And losing custody, that led to
rehab.
So you go to rehab where?
I went to rehab in LA. It was outpatient, called ARC. It was fantastic. That's where I met my therapist, who's still my therapist today. He actually moved to Austin, so I refer everyone to him. He saved my life. Did an outpatient program there, and that's when I was still taking the Adderall. Got into the program, didn't share, sat in the back, didn't share at all. Was like, none of these people are like
so
me.
So the program is you're going to meetings, you're going to 12-step meetings.
Going to meetings. Yeah. I have to get things signed. I have to go to 5 meetings a week. Like, it was very, very strict. Did you want
to go? Like, did you want to get sober when you got to, okay.
No, I didn't want to go. I didn't want to get sober. I didn't see the point. None of this stuff was happening. I wasn't going to see my kids. There was no part of me that wanted to get sober. I was pissed. I very quickly decided that I had to, because otherwise I would never have my kids. But I was angry. I was angry and I was sad and I was hurt and I was little. I was so little. I had no light. I had no sunshine of the spirit, nothing. Like, I was broken. And 9 months into it, I had a binge where I, took a ton of someone else's drugs and Adderall, not drugs, just Adderall and Excedrin and all those things. And I hadn't been drug tested for, I don't know, like 4 months. The drug testing had stopped after rehab. And I got a random call from the drug person, and he was like, I need you to go test today. And I was like, what? There's no court order. I don't need to go test today. He was like, yeah, you have to go test today. And I'm like, I have a flat tire. My tires are bald. I'm out of town. I mean, I gave him like 7 excuses in a row why I couldn't go. And I'd just been on the binge and stayed up all night and like ironed my curtains and organized my spice drawer. I mean, that's the kind of excitement that I had at that point with using. Cleanest house ever.
I've heard brushing the front lawn with a toothbrush.
Oh, I had toothbrushes to clean the corners. There was not a speck of dirt anywhere. Like, I was ironing underwear. This is what it had come to, because I couldn't go out and party, but I couldn't stay sober. So I was just like in this house with curtains drawn, like there's cloudy films on all the windows so no one could see me, like crackhead status. Like, the only reason why it wasn't tinfoil was because I knew better and had a design aesthetic,
And people that don't know, I mean, look, for folks that aren't addicts and they take Adderall, that's all well and good. For me, that's not the case. Sounds like for you, it was not either. So you get drug tested and you could basically you test positive for meth almost. I mean, that's how much, right?
Yeah, 7 times the prescribed amount was what my test was. I was 7 times over the legal limit.
So what happens then?
Adderall. I get sober. Then I truly get sober. That phone call, I still remember it. That phone call, I had a friend who was sober, who was my best friend, who I randomly met at a gym class. So that's really important to say. His name, he would not mind me saying, is Asher Gottesman. He has a lot of sober living houses in LA.
Asher Gottesman?
Gottesman,
okay.
Yeah. Transcend is the sober living houses. He's an exceptional human being. Was just a couple years sober when we became friends, and we went to Barry's boot camp together, and was my Eskimo. He was the one that helped me get sober. He was the one that helped me get on the right path. He, along with Peter and a couple other people, I very easily can say saved my life. I called him. I was on the floor after that phone call from the lawyer when I knew that I'd lost the kids, and I literally couldn't move. I was in a puddle of tears and snot, and I couldn't move. And I called him, and I couldn't even speak. I just said, I need you. And he came over and literally picked me up off the floor and took me to a meeting.
And it's amazing. Guys like that are promotion by attraction. I mean, that's somebody who you knew, who you had in your life that had the sunlight of the spirit going through him. And just in layman's terms, just had a light coming off him.
Yeah. And he was already my best friend. It was just, still the person that I'll call now if I'm feeling lost or anything, he was already my best friend, and he was put in my life for a reason. I genuinely do not feel like anything's an accident, everything happens for a reason. We don't know what it is at the time. Almost always we don't know what it is, but in hindsight 2020, it's oh yeah, it all lines up in this beautiful, messy way that life goes, and his presence in my life was not an accident. And he would come, and I was on that floor and depressed for, a good 5 months before I could take myself to a meeting. So he would come every day and pick me up and take me to a meeting.
You're going to meetings.
Going to meetings. Running through sponsors like no one's business because no one could relate to me, right? They didn't know my story. Still resistant, but definitely sober. Started really leaning into it, and the shift happened for me when it went from resentment to acceptance, and knowing that this was the only way that I was going to ever have my kids again and have a life and quite frankly want to live, right?
Yeah.
When I started sharing and stopped, and sharing means speaking up in meetings and trying to connect with other people, and I stopped looking for the differences and started seeing the similarities. If I'm looking for, they weren't married to a doctor, they didn't have a PI on them, they don't have the meanest lawyer in the world. Stop looking for that and seeing they have a God-shaped hole in their heart. They were hurt when they were young. They just want to be loved and understood. They don't feel like they're worthy.
That's the magic.
All of those things. Yeah.
That's the magic when you stop comparing yourself out. When you stop with that terminal, because people compare themselves out, they go out, they drink, and then they die. I mean, that's the that's the reality of it. Because this stuff will kill you, and on the exact opposite side of the coin, it also will give you. It's the best game in town. Now, I'm hearing you talk. You're going to meetings. You're sharing. You're opening up. I mean, how does that feel to finally be open and honest with people about what's going
on? It felt freeing, right? It felt amazing, and I felt like I had found my people. We're weird. We're a weird group. We have really dark senses of humor, and the vast majority of us have fantastic senses of humor. We're smart. We're wicked. We're too much a lot of the time, which I think is bullshit. I think it's all the exact amount that you should be, but from other people's lens, like we're a weird lot, and I loved it, and I felt like I had found my people. For me, I was always a little scared though, because I was still in the middle of this custody battle, and it was dirty and it was nasty and it had gotten nastier. And I knew that if I did relapse, I couldn't be honest about it because I would lose what little time with my kids I had. So that part it kept me sober, but it also made me mad because I couldn't have a genuine experience with it. And I didn't have a desire to use, I didn't have a desire to drink, but I hated that I wasn't allowed to be who I was completely, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Yeah, and then if I did slip up, I couldn't be honest about it and I couldn't work through it. I didn't slip up, but I had that hanging over my head. So from that point, I got really into the program. I was going to a lot of meetings. I liked it. It was my life. It was my family. It was my anchor. Still custody battle, and there was just something going on with the judge that we had. He didn't like me. He didn't trust me. And after seeing everything that happened there, I'm almost fully convinced that there was an agreement going on their side. And this last part, I mean, he was just so hard on me. I had hundreds of drug tests showing that I was sober, and he just still wouldn't up the custody. I knew other people that had this person as a judge way worse than me who had their custody back in a year. Like, none of it made sense. And I mean, by saying I knew 6 other moms from the program who had been going through a similar situation and they'd already had their kids back. Like, it didn't make any sense. And then, which is also part of the Lifetime movie, right?
Yeah, but and the magic of this, from what I'm hearing, is you're not drinking.
Kept me sober.
This is going on. You're staying sober, and you're talking to other people about it. And for me, that's the thing that I look at in my life. There was so much stuff that used to happen to me that I used to go and get drunk and just squash or just stuff my soul with alcohol. And there became a point finally when I turned the corner and something bad happens to me or something trying or there's trauma, and I talk to somebody else about it, and I get that same feeling I got from getting drunk. And but it's not but it's not killing me.
Yes, that healthy buzz.
Yes.
So that's that's the healthy buzz. That's my slogan for my company, Endorphin Stealer. Like, I'm your chief endorphins officer. Like, that's why I got into fitness so much. Like, I'm getting that healthy high all the time. Like, it's real.
And I wanted to ask you that. When did you realize that fitness was going to be a big part of your recovery?
When I first got sober and I started going to cycling class, and that's where I worked through all my pain. Like, it was dark. It was rhythmic. I was crying every class. I found my worth again in there. Like, I found my sobriety in the room, but I started building up my self-esteem and building up my worth again through exercise. And I felt that I could get that buzz and that same endorphins from that in a healthy way. And it transferred over into feeling good about myself again and feeling worthy and feeling like maybe I did have something to offer.
I was talking to a dude a couple of days ago, just gotten sober or, trying to stop a couple of days. And he was like, I was like, hey, what did you do today? Not like I'm taking his inventory. He was telling me, and he was like, I actually, I walked around the block this morning for like, a half hour, walked outside, and then I rode the Peloton for 45 minutes at night. And I was like thinking to myself, like, dude, that's a great way. It's a great thing to weave in to sobriety. I mean, it was huge for me. And when this guy told me that, I was like, oh, that's awesome. Like, I felt like this guy's got a real shot.
Yeah. And just like people don't talk about trauma enough, they actually don't talk about how crucial diet and exercise is for a recovering addict. Like, I mean, food is medicine, right? And the things that you put into your body and the things that you do with your body when you're sober, we're so much more sensitive to things than a normie. So, like, the positive effects of moving your body, getting those endorphins going, it goes a really long way for someone in early recovery, and it kind of catapults that. I like to call, my husband calls it directional confidence. Like it catapults you in the right direction in a way that without it you struggle with. Like you don't have that endorphin kick. You don't have that confidence that comes from a strong body, and like that's the kind of thing that I want to really put out there. I eventually want to get my doctorate in the relation between recovery and exercise, recovery and food, like how that plays a part in it. These are, lifetime goals of mine, but it was so crucial to my recovery and still is. Like if I go a couple days without working out, I am grumpy.
Yeah.
I am thinking my head's not going the right way. Everyone's wrong. Everyone's stupid. Like I start going into that dry drunk real fast.
Yeah. I mean, you catch me after a couple of days of not working out or no meetings, and yeah, I'm a tough guy to be around. And I owe it to the people.
Really tough.
I owe it to the people I care about, right? To be present and to go to meetings and to work out. And to work, to do my craft, because for me, those are all esteemable things that give me the confidence and enable me to be of service and the person I need to be. Because I mean, I got a ton of flaws, and they're on steroids when I'm not taking care of myself.
Doing push-ups, like they're not doing push-ups. They're like on steroids and like doing heavy lifting. They're trying to be Mr. Olympus or Olympic or whatever.
They're just waiting for you. What do you tell your kids about sobriety and about recovery?
Yeah, so they were real young when I got sober, so I didn't say anything for a while. And then that right was taken away from me. Someone else told them and told it to them in a very negative way. And so at that point I realized, they're going to have to hear the dialogue and hear it from me. When they were younger, when they were 8 and 7, I told them, this is when they were told, and then I had to, redirect the thinking. I told them that I was sick, that I had a disease, and that going to meetings and being around other people who felt the same way helped me be better. And as long as going to meetings was my medicine, and the program was my medicine, and as long as I took my medicine, I'd be okay. And that's as simple as I kept it at that age. As I got older, I would always check in with my therapist and check in with my sponsor, how much more can they handle now? Like, what more information can I give them? And the rule that was given to me was, if they ask you a question, then they're ready to have some version of the answer, right? Mm-hmm. So I never offered the information. I just always told them they can ask me at 7 and 8, you can ask me whatever you want. I will answer any question that you have honestly. Some of it might make you think differently of me. Some of it might not. Like I made a lot of mistakes, but I will never be dishonest with you about it. And I've kept that promise. And, at this point, they're both teenagers and they know my story inside and out.
I go to Austin and I'm close friends, obviously like family. That's how Ali and I know each other. The Weningers, who are the greatest people on earth. But I have gotten to know you through them from a distance, and then got the opportunity to meet you. And by the way, that's why I'm talking to you right now. This whole podcast is about people that are living a full life and that have something coming off them that are sober, and you are one of those people. And I think it's so important for you to be out there and to be seen, and your message of sobriety is carried, whether it's through me or through you or some other conduit. People need to see people like you, and they need to know that you're sober. Your kids are around you a lot, and there's a warmth that comes off like your family. And we talked about it. We talked about earlier too. And this isn't always the solution. I mean, I know plenty of people who have gotten married to quote unquote normal people without drinking problems. But your husband happens to be sober.
He is, yeah. He's sober and has been open with his kids about it as well. We met in the rooms here in Austin, but I ignored him for a couple years because he's handsome. Yes. So he's handsome, and I was still dating someone from LA. So I wouldn't even look at him. Like he thought I was the biggest total ice queen. We'd be in a group of 5 people after the meeting, and we'd all be talking, and he would ask me a question, and I would just pretend like I didn't hear it, or I'd walk away or something. Because I was being respectful. I was being respectful of my relationship, and I knew that he was someone that I would be physically attracted to, and so I just wasn't going to open up that door at all. That's just how I operate. And so when that relationship ended, he and I started dating, and he was like, I had to get to know you all over again. And I thought he was just, you know, a cocky dude who just, you know, all the girls in the program wanted to date him kind of thing. And they did all want to date him, but he's not cocky. He's a beautiful human being, but we really had to, you know, like get to know each other again through that. And when he found out why I ignored him, he thought that was a pretty solid reason.
That's a pretty good reason. And that's yeah. Well, it's about living. And that's another thing too. You know, when I'm not living right, I don't feel very good about myself. And when I'm living right, you know, doing things like respecting situations, I feel better about myself. And honestly,
Absolutely.
I'm probably more attractive to other people, just like, you know, the way that I carry myself.
For sure. They want that person that has that integrity, because they might not know what it is, but when you're living in integrity and when you're living with, you know, applying the principles, applying all the knowledge that you have to every part of your life, people feel that and they want that. And that's part of, you know, like, stay in the sunshine, stay in the light, don't go in the darkness. Like, be the example that people want be what people want in their lives. And that's what just pulls them all to you. And that's how you make the difference, right?
How do you maintain that light? How do you keep that light on? How do you stay so happy in sobriety?
Because I went through hell to get it. And I never forget. Like, I never want to look at my kids and say, I'm sorry I don't get to see you again. Like, I'm sorry, you know, when I had to when everything happened and I was seeing them every day and then all of that got taken away like that. They were little, and I told them, I said, I'm sorry, I can't come see you every day anymore. And they were crying and bawling and kicking, and they were like, I don't understand, Mommy. And how could they? And I did that. Like, I did that to our relationship. I know that it was my addiction that did it, but in their little heart, I just wasn't there anymore, right? And as much as they understand that, the idea of losing any more time with them is enough to stop me in my tracks. Now, that being said, I'm lucky, because a lot of people, their addiction is so strong that even the notion of not having their children isn't enough to keep them sober. And I thank God, like, every time I think about it, I thank God, like, thank God that was enough for me. Because some people, it's so strong that even that, and they're good parents, they're good people, they love their kids, but their addiction's so strong that that's not enough for them. But that's enough for me. And that keeps me sober. And what keeps me, you know, bright and sunshiny is I right size shit. Like, something goes wrong in my day, I don't like my job, whatever it is, I have 10 years of excruciating pain and being told I wasn't good enough and that I shouldn't be a mom and that they'd be better off without me and you're never going to have your kids again. I have 10 years of that kind of pain to relate it to and right size it. Like, nothing's a big deal to me, honestly, like, to the point where people kind of think that it's almost lazy, or I don't know.
Like you said, you keep things right sized, and if I stay in gratitude, I definitely, and this is a cliche, I don't major in the minor, right? Like, stuff that happens, doesn't affect. I know what it's like to crawl into your first meeting or to be looked at as somebody who's completely hopeless, a complete taker, somebody who we don't want around. I'm not like that today at all. And sometimes I think when people are, maybe it's a sense of humor thing, maybe it's whatever, maybe it's, I don't understand why he's not taking this the way that I am. I think these people have no clue what I would be like.
No clue. Like, no clue what you would be like, what I would be like, what all of us would be like that have struggled with this. And, you know, so like, I know what pain feels like. I know what pain feels like where you're on the floor and can't get up. I know what it feels like where you just don't want to wake up. Like, I know what all of that feels like. So if, you know, it's not a big deal. What do they say? Like, it doesn't matter unless it's a big deal, and nothing's a big deal. Like, it's just, nothing is a big deal. It's just all about, like, the joy and the love and the spirit. And my mom used to tell me, when you change the way you look at things, the way things will change. And I apply that to everything. Like, it's perspective. Yeah, you got a flat tire, but you got a car. yeah, you have a crappy boss, but that's a chance for you to apply the principles and to grow as a human being and to be an example of how to handle that for your other coworkers.
I know I'm in a
You
good
know,
place when there's a difficult situation in my life, and I tell myself, or somebody tells me, usually it's somebody telling me, hey, this is an opportunity for you to grow. When I'm looking at
yes,
things through that lens, I'm like, all right, like I'm probably about to do the right thing here, which isn't always the case. What do you tell somebody that is just getting sober or thinking about getting sober?
I tell them this is going to be the hardest thing you've ever done, and it's going to be the best thing you've ever done. And the only person that can choose this for you is you. Like, if this isn't for you, then it's not going to work. You know, you have to commit to it, and it's like this. It will be the most painful thing you've ever gone through, and when you get to the other side, you'll be happy for every single second of those feelings. I just want to be real honest with them, and let them know, like, I'm there day or night. You don't have to do this alone. It's gonna suck, and then it won't, and then it's like less and less and less, and then it's great. But like, you gotta get through. You gotta go straight through it. You can't go around it. Straight through. That's the only way.
That applies to life. I mean, at some point you
Yeah,
realize when you get old enough, like nothing worth anything is easy.
absolutely.
And sobriety is it's kind of it's a much bigger version of that, I guess. So anything else you want to share?
Oh Lord, the open-ended question. Oh Lord. I hope you can edit this afterwards and edit all the empty space where I'm thinking of an answer for that.
We can do that. Mike can do that.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot Mike was listening in the background. I would have been more nervous. I mean, everything that's coming to mind is so cliche, but I don't care because they're sayings for a reason, right? Like, you have all these different sayings for a reason. And I mean, the thing that I would tell them is it's worth it. It's worth it. And you're worth it. Like, you are worthy of feeling good about yourself and feeling like you have a place in this world. Like, your presence, your sobriety, you can make a difference just by showing up for yourself. You don't have to be quiet about it. And no shame. Like, stop with the shaming. They say, like, addiction and alcoholism still has such a bad connotation to it. That's what I would say. There's no shame in you having this affliction and you being an addict and you being an alcoholic and your history. There's no shame in that at all. Like, it's actually a beautiful opportunity for you to get these tools and have a life that's so much more fulfilling and has so much more depth than the average person. Like, as much as I've gone through, I'm so happy for it because before I had the program, before I got sober, I didn't know how to do anything right. Relationships, jobs, taking care of the house, taxes. Like, I missed the life manual. And the manual that I got from taking this seriously and diving straight in makes me the best version of myself that I could possibly be.
I've heard a guy say once, it's the only thing, because it's a disease as far as the American Medical Association is concerned. It's the only disease you can have that you can actually be better off for having it.
Yes. Like, it's a gift. When applied, if you change the way you look at things, the way things would change, right? This is a gift for us to be able to elevate and vibrate on a higher level and be of service to others and, like, make an impact. I look at this as it's a really weird gift. It doesn't have the best wrapping paper, but when you open it up, it's spectacular. And I'm happy to be one of us.
Ali, I knew this was going to be good. I didn't know it was going to be that good. So Ali Perry Fitness is the Instagram, right? Ali Perry Fitness, and it's aliperry.com, ALIPERRY Fitness. And so you're in Austin. You teach ride classes there. And a lot of stuff on Ali Perry Fitness, real quick, is some of the stuff is virtual right now too. I saw.
Yeah, so I'm about a couple weeks away from launching my app, which is daily workouts and meal plans. And my favorite part of it is the foundation. So it's AP Fit, Fuel, and Foundations. Foundations is like the community where you can reach out to me, talk to me. I look at working out as a way of working things out of you from the inside out, like getting stronger emotionally and mentally. And the physical part is just a lovely side effect. So it's an inclusive community where I'm going to be just helping women, men, whoever it is, like find their strength and their power again. And I'm going to be gifting, I don't know how many yet, either 100 or 200 subscriptions to local teachers or nationwide. They can be anywhere. But when I launch it, I'm going to be gifting a couple hundred subscriptions to teachers because they are in the front lines and they need something to help them feel good right now. And I come from a family of teachers, so I'll let you know that and you can link it. And then the first 200 that come to me will get the subscription for free and they can work out and feel good and then help our kids. And it's just a big circle of happiness.
It's a big circle of happiness, a circle of life. Look pretty good today. Ollie, I guess we're done now, but I can't thank you enough. Thanks so much for listening to the Payoff with Pete. Once again, I'm Pete Souza. And of course, we are part of the Rogue Media Network. All kinds of good podcasts you can find at roguemedianetwork.com. And of course, you can find this podcast and all those other ones wherever you get your podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, or spots like
This has been Rogue Media Network Podcast.